Hi Reddit, I've been lurking here for a while, and I guess it's finally time to share my story. Maybe I just need to get it off my chest, or maybe I want to know if I'm overreacting, but here it goes. I, 24F, grew up in a family where it always felt like I was extra. Not unwanted exactly, but never really needed. My parents had my older brother first, and from what I've been told, he was everything they ever hoped for. Smart, confident, destined for greatness, their words, not mine. Then I was born. My grandma once told me, when I was much older, that my mom cried when she found out I wasn't a boy. At the time, everyone brushed it off as hormones, stress, whatever. But looking back, it kind of explains everything. Growing up, I don't remember a single moment where I felt like I was the priority. My brother got the best of everything: attention, praise, opportunities. I got what was left over. If there were two of something, he got to choose first. If there was one, well, it was never even a question. It wasn't always obvious. There was no outright neglect, no dramatic scenes. Just a constant, quiet feeling that I was second place in my own family. And the worst part? They never even tried to hide that they believed my brother would become someone important, while I was just there. Like a backup plan no one intended to use. I think that's where it all started. As I got older, things didn't stay subtle anymore. At some point, my parents stopped just favoring my brother and started actively comparing us. And I don't mean in a normal, try to motivate your kid way. It was constant, and it always ended the same, with me being less. If I got a good grade, the response was, your brother got better at your age. If I cleaned the house, it was, why can't you be as organized as him? If I was tired or stressed, I was too sensitive, while he was working hard for his future. It didn't matter what I did, it was never enough to stand on its own. Everything I achieved was measured against him, and somehow I always came up short. I started to believe it too. I remember looking at myself in the mirror as a teenager and thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just not as good. My self-esteem took a hit that I didn't even fully understand at the time. I just knew I felt smaller and smaller every year. Meanwhile, my brother could do no wrong in their eyes. Even when he messed up, they'd excuse it. He's just under pressure. He has big goals. You wouldn't understand. And maybe that's what hurt the most. They never even considered that I might have goals too. By the time I was finishing school, I had already internalized what my parents thought of me. Not in a dramatic way, it was more like a quiet, constant understanding. Don't aim too high, you're not the one they're betting on. So when I first mentioned that I wanted to apply to a prestigious university, it didn't even feel like I was sharing a plan. It felt like I was confessing something unrealistic. My mom didn't even pause. She gave me this short laugh, not loud, not cruel on the surface, but enough to make my chest tighten, and said, be realistic. My dad didn't laugh. He just looked at me and asked, and how exactly are you going to pay for that? No, that's great. No, let's look into it. Just immediate doubt. Meanwhile, my brother could mention the most random career idea and they'd treat it like a future success story already in progress. I still applied. Not because I was confident, I wasn't. I was terrified. Every application I sent felt like I was waiting to be proven right, that I wasn't good enough. The only person who didn't make me feel that way was my grandma. She'd call me almost every evening during that time. Not to pressure me, not to check results, but just to ask how I was doing. And when I told her about the universities I was applying to, she didn't laugh. She didn't question it. She just said, of course you should try. I remember one specific moment. I was sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by papers, drafts of motivation letters, and rejection fears. I told her, what if I'm not good enough to get in? And she looked at me like the answer was obvious and said, then they'll be the ones making a mistake, not you. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. When the acceptance email finally came, I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the screen for a solid minute because I was so sure it would be a rejection. When I did open it, I got in. I didn't scream. I didn't cry immediately. I just sat there in shock, rereading the same sentence over and over again, like my brain couldn't process it. When I told my parents, their reaction was exactly what you'd expect at that point. My mom said, well, let's see if you can handle it. My dad just nodded and went back to whatever he was doing. That was it. No hug. No congratulations. Nothing. That hurt more than if they had just said they didn't believe in me. But when I told my grandma, everything changed. She actually cried. Like, full-on happy tears. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe and kept saying I knew it. I knew you could do it. And then she did something I will never be able to repay her for. She told me she would cover my tuition. I immediately said no. I knew it was a lot of money, and I didn't want to be a burden. I was so used to thinking that way. But she wouldn't even let me finish. She said, "This isn't a burden. This is an investment in you." My parents didn't argue. They didn't offer to help. They didn't even pretend to be involved in the decision. It was just accepted that if I wanted this, it wouldn't come from them. So I said yes. A few months later, I packed one suitcase, said a pretty emotionless goodbye at home, and left. No big send-off. No, we'll miss you. Just a quiet take care. The only real goodbye that mattered was from my grandma. She hugged me at the door and whispered, "Go build your life." And for the first time, I actually felt like maybe I could. Moving away for university felt unreal at first. I remember arriving with my one suitcase, standing in this tiny dorm room, and just thinking, that's it? I actually made it here. No one was watching me, no one was comparing me, no one was waiting for me to fail. It was quiet. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel heavy, it felt peaceful. At the beginning, I struggled. Not academically, I could handle the coursework, but mentally. I was so used to doubting myself that even small things felt overwhelming. I'd second-guess every answer in class, hesitate to speak up, assume everyone else was smarter. But something slowly started to change. No one at university knew my brother. No one knew my parents or their expectations. To everyone there, I was just me. And that meant I had a chance to figure out who that actually was. I started participating more. At first, it was small, answering one question in class, joining a group discussion, introducing myself without overthinking it for hours. And nothing bad happened. No one compared me. No one dismissed me. In fact, people actually listened. I made a few friends, the kind of people who didn't make me feel like I had to compete for space. We studied together, complained about deadlines, laughed over stupid things. It sounds normal, I know, but for me it was completely new. Even my professors treated me differently than I expected. I remember one of them once telling me, "You have a really sharp way of thinking. You should speak up more." That sentence stuck with me for weeks. No one had ever described me like that before. Meanwhile, my parents barely checked in. When they did call, the conversations always somehow circled back to my brother, how well he was doing, how big his plans were, how focused he was. They'd occasionally ask, "So, how's university?" But it felt more like a formality than genuine interest. At some point, I stopped expecting anything else. And weirdly, that helped. Because the less I relied on their approval, the more I started building something for myself. By the end of my first year, I wasn't the same person who had left home with that suitcase. I was still insecure, still figuring things out, but there was something new there too. A small, growing belief that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't second place by default. By the time I got closer to graduating, something had shifted in a way I didn't fully notice at first. I wasn't constantly doubting myself anymore. It didn't disappear overnight, it was more like it slowly loosened its grip on me. I started trusting my answers in class, speaking without rehearsing every sentence in my head 10 times, even taking initiative in group projects instead of quietly doing whatever was assigned to me. And people responded to that. I built a small but solid circle of friends, the kind of people who expected me to succeed, not fail. We supported each other, shared opportunities, and actually celebrated wins together. I didn't feel like an outsider anymore. Academically, I was doing really well. Better than I ever thought I could. And then came the part that still feels surreal to me. I got my first real job offer before I even graduated. I remember reading the email 3 times, just like I did with my acceptance letter. It was from a company I actually wanted to work at, not just something I applied to out of desperation. The position was exactly in my field, the team seemed great, and the salary. Honestly, way better than I expected as a fresh graduate. When I went in for the interview, I was nervous, but not in that old, I'm not good enough way. It was more like, I really want this. And somehow, I got it. My first weeks there were a mix of excitement and imposter syndrome, but again, something was different. My coworkers were kind. Like, genuinely kind. They helped me when I didn't understand something, included me in conversations, asked for my opinion like it actually mattered. My manager especially stood out. He didn't micromanage, didn't talk down to me, didn't make me feel small. Instead, he gave me responsibility and trusted me to handle it. And when I did something well, he said it. Simple things like, good job on this, or you handled that really well. It might sound normal, but for me it was new. At some point, I caught myself leaving work one day and realizing I felt proud. Not relieved. Not exhausted. Not like I survived something. Proud. And that scared me a little, because I wasn't used to that feeling. But at the same time, I didn't want it to go away. For the first time in my life, things weren't just okay, they were actually going right. And I started to wonder what else I might be capable of if I kept going. A year into my job, my life looked completely different from anything I had imagined growing up. I had a stable income, a routine I actually enjoyed, people around me who respected me, and, maybe most importantly, a sense that I was in control of my own life. I wasn't just getting by. I was building something. I started saving money pretty aggressively. Not because I was obsessed with it, but because I had this quiet goal in the back of my mind. I wanted something that was mine. Fully mine. Something no one could take credit for, compare, or dismiss. At first, it felt unrealistic, kind of like the university did back then. But unlike before, I didn't have voices around me telling me I couldn't do it. So I kept going. I tracked my expenses, picked up extra responsibilities at work, which, thankfully, also meant better bonuses, and said no to a lot of impulsive spending. Not in a miserable way, I still lived my life, but I stayed focused. And then, one day, I realized something that didn't feel real at all. I could actually afford a house. Not a mansion, obviously, but a small, cozy, modern place in a good area. The kind of home I used to scroll past online and think, maybe someday, but probably not me. I want to see it, just to look. Big mistake. The moment I walked in, something clicked. It wasn't perfect, but it felt calm. Safe. Like a space where I could finally exist without feeling judged or compared. I remember standing in the empty living room, sunlight coming through the windows, and thinking, I could build a life here. So I did something that younger me would never have had the confidence to do. I bought it. Signing those papers was one of the most surreal moments of my life. My hands were shaking, not because I was scared, but because I couldn't believe I had actually made it to that point on my own. No help from my parents. No family support. Just me and my grandma who had given me that first chance. Speaking of which, she was the first person I told. She was just as emotional as when I got into university. She kept saying how proud she was, how I had built everything step by step. And honestly, hearing that from her meant more than the house itself. But my parents? I didn't tell them right away. Not because I was hiding it exactly, but because I didn't want that moment ruined. I didn't want it compared, minimized, or somehow turned into something about my brother. So, for a little while, I just lived in it. Decorated it how I wanted. Invited my friends over. Drank coffee in my own kitchen in the mornings in complete silence, knowing that everything around me existed because I made it happen. It was the first place in my life that truly felt like home. And part of me wondered how long that peace would last once my family found out. Around the same time my life was finally coming together, my brothers started falling apart. At first, I didn't know all the details. My parents would still talk about him the same way, like he was on the path to something big, like everything was just temporary setbacks. But the tone had changed. There were more excuses than achievements. More he's figuring things out than actual results. Eventually, the truth started slipping through. The big plans he always had didn't work out. The opportunities my parents were so sure would turn into success fell through. And instead of adjusting or taking responsibility, he just stopped trying. He moved back in with my parents. And from what I understood, he wasn't doing much besides existing there, no stable job, no clear direction. Just living off the same people who had always believed he could do no wrong. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I had been the less promising child, the one who was supposed to be average at best. And now, somehow, I was the one with a stable job, a home, and an actual future. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't brag, didn't compare, mostly because I knew exactly how that felt. But my brother noticed. I think it started when my parents found out about the house. I hadn't made a big announcement, but news travels fast in families like this. Suddenly, I started getting more calls. At first, they sounded almost impressed. My mom asking questions about the house, my dad making comments like, "Well, that's unexpected." And my brother? He was quiet at first. Too quiet. Then the questions started, not direct ones, but passive-aggressive comments. Things like, "Must be nice to get lucky," or "I guess some people just have it easy." Easy. That word stuck with me. Because there was nothing easy about clawing your way out of years of being told you're second best. But I didn't argue. I just kept my distance. What I didn't expect was how far he would go next. At some point, it stopped being jealousy and turned into something else entirely. Something that almost cost me everything I had worked for. I wish I could say I saw it coming. Looking back, the signs were there, the comments, the tone, the way my brother couldn't even pretend to be happy for me. But I never thought he'd actually do anything. I was wrong. It started small. At work, a colleague casually asked me one day if everything was okay at home. I was confused. I don't usually mix my personal life with work, so it felt out of place. Then another person made a weird comment about how stress can make people act unpredictably. I didn't understand what they were talking about. Until I did. Apparently, someone had been spreading rumors about me. Not just harmless gossip, I'm talking about things that could actually damage my reputation. That I was unstable, that I had serious personal issues, that I got my job through connections instead of merit. It didn't make sense. I had worked hard for everything. My record at work was clean, my relationships with colleagues were good, so where was this coming from? Then I found out. A mutual acquaintance, someone who knew both me and my brother, mentioned that he had been talking about me a lot lately. And not in a good way. Piece by piece, it came together. He was behind it. I don't even know what hurt more, the fact that he was lying, or how calculated it all felt. These weren't random comments. They were targeted, believable enough to plant doubt, but vague enough to avoid direct confrontation. And it worked. Not completely, but enough to make things shift. My manager scheduled a meeting with me. I remember walking into that room with my heart pounding, not even fully knowing what I was about to be accused of. That old feeling came back for a moment, the one that said, "See, you were never good enough." It was only a matter of time. But this time, I didn't let it take over. I explained everything. Calmly. Clearly. I didn't get defensive, didn't panic. I just told the truth and backed it up with my work, my track record, and the relationships I had built there. And, thankfully, it mattered. My manager listened. Really listened. He told me they had heard some things, but nothing concrete, and my performance didn't match any of those claims. If anything, it contradicted them. That conversation could have gone